Welcome to the motorsports capital of the world, one of the most historic venues along the way for the flat track competitors. For decades, the best have come here to race, but they took a 9-year hiatus from this place and they came back in 2008. The Grand National Championship Series will approach speeds of 130 miles per hour as they go bar to bar, just inches away from each other. It's all part of the fun. Get ready. This is going to be a barn burner. Welcome to the Indy Mile. Welcome to Indianapolis, Indiana, the motorsports capital of the world. We're at the State Fairgrounds here, and it's time for the AMA Grand National Championship Series presented by E3 Spark Plugs. Ken Stout and Chris Carr calling the action for you. And Chris, you won this one in 2008 when it returned.
Well, the Indy Mile has always been a big race to win for guys on the AMA Grand National schedule. As we're nearing the end of the season, these guys are going to want to make their move in the points to position themselves for a championship. This is a big one for all involved, and Indy Mile win is really looking good on a resume.
Speaking of the points, here's a look at them. As you can see, Jared Mees out front of Jake Johnson by 20 points. So let's go back and take a look at our highlights from heat race number 1 for the expert category.
The 42 of Brian Smith darts to the outside off the start on the left of your screen. Around the outside of 95, JD Beach. Smith going to the cushion right off the start. Wants to see how long that'll last. That's a pretty wide black groove down there on the bottom. I don't know how long that line's going to hold up for him, but Jared Mees moves himself up into second, but Smith on the Crosley Radio Kawasaki has been really fast on the miles this year. Setting sail. Has this heat race in hand.
Yeah, I'm really surprised to see it work so well up there in the fluff, if you will, up there in the cushion. Now, of course, he's pulled it back down to the bottom as it starts to rubber and get a little bit of grip, and now he gets some heat coming to the stripe.
Well, it was a battle of the Kawasaki's there to the checkered flag with Smith narrowly holding off JD Beach on his, and point leader Jared Mees, 4th. 3 Kawasaki's, 1, 2, 3 in that heat race. I wonder if that's a sign of things to come tonight.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you the same thing as we take a look at our results from heat race number 1 from E3 Spark Plugs. Once again, let's go back and show you some highlights from heat race number 2. And Henry Wiles on board the Ducati. We had a chance to speak with him about the development of that bike earlier.
There's some real positives. I think we can do well on the bike, but for me and how I ride my style with the bike, it tailors to some tracks better than others. It favors a track that has a good amount of traction. It's easier to ride then, you know, because I'm not chasing the bike around as much. I'm not, the rear wheel's not spinning as much, which means I'm not getting pulled away or guys aren't catching me, as much. So we're trying to figure out what exactly it is to change the bike the proper way to get us forward. We've kind of identified the problems, but now it's how do we make the proper changes to be on top of the box and to run up front every single weekend.
Still trying to figure the motors out, and these are basically motors that we bought used, and we've had a couple of engine failures that probably we shouldn't have had if we knew a little bit more about the engine and had some more input on the engine. And that's the most difficult thing about flat track racing. To develop a motorcycle, you cannot really prepare one of these tracks to test on. The tracks are very different. You need 100 motorcycles to run the track in. So what you're dealing with is Harleys have been here since the 70s. With all these teams running them, they've kind of evolved to where they're the perfect machine around this track. We're one team with one chassis trying to learn in 3-4 lap practices and then go race that day. So no, we're moving forward.
All right, now, highlights from heat race number 2, and Wiles will be part of this one on board the number 17 bike as he was a little bit deeper in the pack.
We see the Kenny Coolbeth on the 2 and Sammy Halbert the 7. Trying to run up the inside of number 1, Jake Johnson. Some real close action. And turn 3 at the Indy Mile is always tight, as we saw there. These guys are going to fill each other out and see who's got the advantage going to the stripe. And the number 1 of Johnson taking the point.
Kenny Coolbeth, of course, broke his leg earlier in the season back in June, but definitely getting back in his groove, feeling better about himself. And the bike's definitely performing as the team gels. Robert Pearson and Nicole Cheza doing battle for fourth, a little bit further behind the leaders.
And an important position that is fourth goes to the final, as we see Henry Wiles wanting to chase them both down for that last spot into the main event.
Nicole with a great job. She picked up the spot right there, but eventually it would be Wiles who gets around both of them. Now we go back.
With Halbert up the inside, this is an important position for second. First and second goes to the Dash for Cash, which pays points. Third is a straight shot to the final with no extra bonus points.
Jake Johnson checking out on the field here. Really did a phenomenal job as he comes across the stripe first. And of course, he'll be part of that Dash for Cash, which also pays those oh-so-important points. Here's a look at the results from heat race number 2 from E3 Spark Plugs. Jake Johnson, your winner. Sammy Halbert making it into that dash.
Getting in the dash is ultra important in this championship series. Every point counts with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 paid in the dash. You got to be there to win a title.
All right, highlights from heat race number 3. Once again, here we go at the Indy Mile.
The number 80 of Stevie Bonzi on the Werner Springsteen Kawasaki out front. The first time he's ridden this motorcycle. This bike won here a couple years ago with Brian Smith at the controls. So he's on a good horse, and Indiana's own number 31J of Dan Ingram, making his return to flat track this year at the age of 47, is chasing down a heat race win at the moment.
Carver Jr. also in there as well. The top 5. You can tie them together with a string. It is amazing how close they run out here at these speeds. And just a quick little bobble. And that's how it went down and how quickly it changes as Dan Ingram goes down after a little nudge from Baker.
Well, it looks like Dan has been having a little bit of trouble with the rear suspension, trying to hop. He goes a little wide. Baker tries to fill the gap and ends up clipping his handlebars in the process. That's unfortunate for Dan, and I know Baker didn't knock him down intentionally, but sometimes you got to exercise a little bit more patience than that.
We go back up to the battle for the lead, and these guys really making some quick reflex adjustments here as this track throws them some curveballs from time to time. And look at this, 3 wide as they cross the stripe at the end of this one. Bonzi able to hang on as he steals the win. Here's a look at your E3 Spark Plug results for heat race number 3.
Great run by Sean Bear, the 32, into his first Dash for Cash. First visit for him. Congratulations.
And once again, we'll get everybody lined up here. The semifinals are coming up for the experts. Should be some great racing action here at the Indy Mile. Welcome back to the Indy Mile here with the AMA Grand National Championship Series presented by E3 Spark Plugs. They're lining up the semifinals, but before we show you that, let's show you the highlights from our Dash for Cash.
5 points to the winner of this race, 4 for second, on down to 5th. You get 6th, you get the goose egg. So it's important to get out front in 4 laps. You want to control the race from the front, as we see the 42 of Brian Smith on the Kawasaki being chased down by the number 1 of Jake Johnson. And it appears to be that, as we saw in Sacramento, that it's late draft moves into the corners. The Kawasaki horsepower rears its head down the straightaways. It's pretty easy for him to come back by.
Bonzi was hanging there in 3rd place as well with a battle of his own, trying to hang on to that top 3 as the 2 leaders were going at it. Back and forth every lap. That's what this sport is known for. All said and done, it was the Kawasaki on top. Brian Smith will take that along with the bonus 5 points and go into the main.
Very interesting to see out of the 6 riders in the Dash for Cash, 5 of them on Kawasaki's in a sport that's been dominated by Harley-Davidson for nearly 40 years. Maybe a sign of things to come.
Certainly dominant here so far tonight as they get the 10-second starting board there. What's going through your mind just before the start of one of these races?
Good start, 8-lap semifinals. You want to be at the front early, control your own destiny. A top 3 position puts you in the final. Get a good start. That's the main thing. Get a good start and control the pace. as Nicole Chesa gets the whole shot. She's certainly going to control her destiny at the moment. So good run for her in the beginning of this one.
We talked about her a little bit earlier. Ended up finishing 6th in her heat race. Was in a battle there for 4th for a little bit. Henry Wiles actually came up and eventually ended up with the transfer position. Chesa and Pearson were battling in their heat race, and now Jeremy will join in with the battle.
Jeremy DeRider on the Suzuki getting a good double draft down the back straightaway. Gets a great run to the front down the front stretch. So they're all lined up behind him as we see the 20 of Matthew Weidman out there on the Kawasaki as well. Nicole has her hands full on her Harley with all these other brands tonight.
Well, you really see them moving around a lot there. What's going on here?
Well, we're starting to see the track come in. It's laying down a little bit of rubber, and it's making a difference in the chassis adjustments. The track is gaining a lot of grip as the race goes on, and more rubber gets laid down. And nice save by Matt Weidman. I'm not quite sure what happened going into the corner there, but he had her full lock for an instant.
Well, it looked like his front tire just clipped the back of Chesa's rear tire, and that, of course, is disastrous.
Well, these were desperate moments for those who want to make the final. There's only 3 spots available, and we got a gaggle of 8 chasing it down right now.
Boy, 2 wide in there. That's what flat track racing is all about. As you watch the absolute best in the world go at it, look at that pack.
Well, the 34 of Jeremy DeRider out front, 1,000cc motorcycle, restricted a little bit differently than the Harleys and the Kawasaki's, is certainly towing them around at the moment. He's controlling the pace from the front as 31J of Dan Ingram slots in behind Robbie Pearson for the 3rd and 2nd positions. So this is anybody's race for that final transfer spot. 2
and 3 wide as they dive into turn number 1. Once again, they are all scrapping for position, and that's exactly what the 34 wants. Everybody to keep fighting for 2nd.
Well, when you're 3 wide going into the corner and you have room for 1. Oh, Chesa down on the outside.
Oh! A disastrous wreck here.
Wow, that happened so fast, it's hard to tell who that was, but I believe the 44C of Chase Sconyers really nowhere to go coming off of turn 2. Great to see Nicole Chesa walk off after that. I mean, she got looks like bumped wide by the 20 of Matt Weidman. She's up against the concrete wall. Her bike caroms down into the middle of the track, and Sconyers nowhere to go. Wow, that's an unfortunate situation there.
Another look at it here. Chesa out against the wall. Like you said, she is okay. But look at the bike back mid-track, and he had no place to go. Lands flat right there as well, so it looks like it possibly knocked him out. But, of course, safety is there immediately to attend to him, and we will certainly keep you updated as we learn more here in the booth. There's a look at your speed code top 5. Jeremy leads the group. We'll get them restarted when we come back. And the ambulance will transport Chase Sconyers. We are hearing initial reports are he is awake and alert. That is great news there. So they'll evaluate a little bit more. And again, we will keep you up to date as we learn more here. Great news, though, that he is initially okay. One more look at what happened here. Boy, what a scary moment.
Really nowhere to go for Chase. Situation like that coming off the corner, accelerating up to about 100 miles per hour on this point of the racetrack. Riders dodging right and left. Chase really nowhere to go. That was a tough one to avoid.
He was already aiming back down to the left, but there was just no way for him to know that that bike was going to bounce back down in front of him. And as you can see right there, knocked out. So certainly I think a concussion will be part of the equation, all said and done. But as we mentioned before, he is alert and conscious now.
A staggered restart. It looks like they're in a row, but each rider is about one bike length behind the other with De Ruyter at front, Pearson in second. Claremont, Indiana's Dan Ingram looking for a spot in the final as well. And it's the 65 of Corey Texter, older brother of Shayna Texter, in the fourth position. Top 3 go.
And how about the toughness of Ingram after surviving a wreck a little bit earlier in the evening as well?
Well, and having to come from behind because get knocked off in the heat race. He certainly did not have a front row start in his semi. He was coming from the third row, and here he finds himself in transfer position, getting ready to go in the main event. That's awesome.
And you mentioned it before. I mean, we're not talking about a young kid here.
He's
47 years old. That's pretty good.
47 years old, racing many of them less than half his age. Halfway to go in the race here with 4 laps. You can bet if there's any race on the circuit this year that Dan Ingram wants to have a good result here in Indianapolis.
Well, I'll tell you, just the smallest of little bobbles, if you get outside, somebody is sticking their nose underneath, and it just makes for extremely exciting racing, but oh so scary, way down to the bottom.
Really, and Ingram up the inside of DeRuyter with a very late draft move, puts it to the point. When DeRuyter's up front on that Suzuki, he really seems to be towing the guys around as he struggles to get a drive off turn 4, and Ingram sets sail. He cut a perfect turn 3 and 4. That's good for him. And that's a pretty tight race for second and third now.
DeRuyter, Pearson, trying to hang on there for those final 2 spots. That battle for that third and final transfer spot is oh so important. Ingram gets a great drive off the turns, no doubt is hooked up there, but we need to focus on that battle for third.
As Pearson separates himself and the 20 of Matt Weidman on the Scott Power Sports Kawasaki around the outside of DeRuyter into turn 3 with some momentum. He's going to want to chase into the draft of the 27 of Pearson to get away with 1 lap to go as DeRuyter's starting to get some handling issues. I think we're seeing him fight the head shake down the straightaway here on the last lap.
DeRuyter really making some nice saves there. You talked about it before, and now it looks like he might have checked up a little bit as we see Weidman close the gap.
With a half a lap to go, Ingram setting sail out front. Battle for second and third, although not overly important other than maybe bragging rights in the pits. Both those positions go to the final, but here we are off turn 4, and Indiana's own Dan Ingram returned to racing this year. Gets a checkered flag first in the semifinal and gets to go to the national in his hometown race.
And that is awesome. And no matter what you say, it's exciting. It doesn't matter even if it is a semifinal. If you can win one, it's still a special moment. So congrats to Daniel Ingram for coming back after a tough heat race that saw him eat a little bit of dirt. Those results from E3 Spark Plugs as we take a look at the rest of the competitors, and a number of them done for the night.
Dan, I don't think I've seen a crowd go so nuts for a semi-winner like yourself. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, man. That feels great here in our hometown. Wish we hadn't crashed in our heat race there. I got my handlebar taken out and went for a pretty good little tumble there, but that TCR Harley is really fast, man.
Any injuries from that tumble?
My wrist is pretty sore. I don't think it's broke, but it's pretty sore.
Who cares? You made it to the main.
I don't care. I'll worry about it tomorrow.
He's a tough guy, man. Needless to say, he is a scrapper for sure.
I think the bone could be sticking out in that wrist right now, and that wouldn't keep him from running the main event in his hometown.
All right, let's bring out semifinal number 2. What do you look for here? Any favorites?
Well, I would say the 59 of Willie McCoy lined up on the outside for this semifinal. He won the Springfield Mile earlier this year on Memorial Day weekend. He's got to be a favorite amongst the rookies of 10Z Briar Bauman and the 33E of Michael Avila, as well as Cale Kolkman, 98, 73 of Doug Lawrence from Canada, and the other rookie in the field, 91 on the Triumph of Mikey Martin. I expect that Willie McCoy should be able to control this race, but we got a lot of young, hungry riders wanting to make their mark on the Indy Mile as well.
They thunder down into turn number 1.
The 10Z of Briar Bauman out front. Rookie run at the Indy Mile.
And how hard is it to deal with a bike in the first lap? I would think the tire pressures have to come up, but these guys charge in as though everything is ready to go.
You know, with an 8-lap race, it takes about 4 minutes to complete this one. They want to get to work early, as we had a rookie of Mikey Avila on the Harley-Davidson out front, followed by the 91, another rookie of Mikey Martin on the Triumph, and the veteran Willie McCoy at the age of 42. Chasing with the kids around here. I mean, Avila's 19, Bauman 17, Martin's 20. I mean, He's got 20-plus years on all three of them, it seems like. He's got his hands full with these guys.
Just a beautiful move there. You see him duck out. One ducks out. One goes to the outside and makes the move on the outside. What a beautiful job.
A good run by Avila around the outside, kept his momentum up. There are times where turn 3 does widen out a bit. Guys get sucked in by the draft and sometimes overshoot. As that happens, as the night goes on, it wears a little bit more rubber around the outer edge, making multiple lines going in, making outside draft passes possible late in the evening.
As quickly as Avila takes over that lead, he gets repassed again, and that's exactly what happens here. I mean, it's going to be the nature of the entire night, as we've seen this already through the heat races and the semis.
The 91 of Michael Martin on the Bonneville Performance Triumph, doing a great job. He's really come on strong this year with this new program. He's a rookie in the twins class. He's gaining some valuable experience with the likes of Willie McCoy, 59 in this group. And Avila is pushing him. They're both Northern California guys, so they grew up pushing each other week in and week out. So this is like being home for them.
And you do build a confidence when you're racing with somebody that you've been competing with for years.
I would imagine so, especially for the rookies. And I would say McCoy might be a little apprehensive. He doesn't have a whole lot of laps around a racetrack with these guys. It might, but as we see Martin making a little mistake, Willie runs up through the inside and is probably going to try and set sail here.
Yeah, that was a 2-for-1 corner and right back at him.
And Martin with the draft pass going into turn 1, great move. We see that Triumph is not short on horsepower either. This type of track, the Indy Mile, will favor the bikes with good top-line speed. The Triumph is showing that it can run with any brand out there at the moment.
McCoy again takes a look at Martin. Avila back behind him has kind of fallen out of this run for the win, but is still in that transfer spot. Now has closed the gap right back up and is back in it.
Well, we saw Martin get a little wide on the edge of the groove. The Triumph maybe not cornering quite as well as the Harley-Davidson. And you saw McCoy able to go underneath and actually put a gap on him. But the power of the Triumph runs him down on the straightaway. And Willie tucks back in behind now, coming off of turn 2 on the final lap.
Well, again, quick corrections here as we watch them. Can Martin hang on here? Keep in mind, they just need to be smart. They are both in the main event. If they stay where they're at right now, and it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen.
But the veteran 59 of McCoy elects to stay behind and try and make a draft run to the line for the win. Not that it really matters, but he wants to get towed to the line and guarantee his position for the final.
Maybe a look for things later to come to find out if he can make that move before the stripe, and Michael Martin will hang on to win this second semi. We'll take a look at our results from E3 spark plugs, and of course, again, the top 3 will all advance into the main. We have great news that Chase Sconyers, his initial report is he has a broken ankle, and of course, a concussion that we anticipated, but other than that, it looks like he is going to be fine, so a full recovery is expected.
Michael, now that wasn't easy, was it? Congratulations, though.
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't easy. Had to push as hard as I can. I was battling with Willie McCoy and Mikey Avila, Briar Bauman, and just I had to push as hard as I can, and happy to come away with the win.
Michael Martin moving on to the main.
When we come back, we'll line up our main event, but it's going to be the pro singles we show you first. If you love great side-by-side racing, you're going to love this. Welcome back to Indianapolis and the Indy Mile here. For the AMA Grand National Championship Series, the Pro Singles main event is coming up next. This race presented by E3 Spark Plugs, and the Pro Single battle for the championship in terms of points could not be any closer. But if you love great side-by-side racing, boy, I'll tell you, this class is loaded with it.
All year long on the mile racetracks, we've seen photo finishes 3-4 wide at the line. As we see riders down here early in the first start of this event, rider climbing off to the outside of the hay bales, not quite sure who that was. As we see Michael LaBelle from Canada, I'm not quite sure how he went down. I would imagine in that part of the corner, he probably had a handlebar taken out from him.
Kind of a strange response there. At first, it looked like he really probably did bang his head, but then not real sure what that was after he finally stood up. But good news is he's standing up.
As we get going again, and You know, these bikes, you hear them hit the rev limiter there on these 450 single-cylinder machines. It's hard to get away on a mile track with these bikes. They weigh 225 pounds. They put out between 60 and 65 horsepower. It's all about the draft and track position, much like a Talladega NASCAR race. You want to be near the front, and it's hard to come from behind on a track so narrow with a narrow racing line like we have here in Indianapolis. As Zach Palmer's out front and Steven Vandeker trying to stretch it away here.
Vandeker, one of those players in the points, your points leader coming into the event, and as you can see, he takes another one here this season. He has been so solid in dealing with that competition, so excellent stuff out of the pro singles, and the fans love every second of it. Vandeker, your winner. Colindres in second by just a half a second. Palmer rounds out the top three. Just great stuff here as you take a look at the results from E3 Spark Plugs.
Great race on the singles, and I expect the twins to do the same thing here tonight at the Indy Mile. This should be a barn burner.
When we come back, it'll be the Expert Twin main event. You don't want to miss it. We're at the historic Indy Mile. This race so loaded with history. Going back to 1975, one of the special moments is Kenny Roberts with his come-from-behind win on the too-tough-to-tame Yamaha TZ750. I know a bike that you're familiar with as well. As we take a look at the lineup here for the main event, of course, the competitors out here getting ready to go. And some of the guys, as you mentioned before, will actually cruise just a little bit to get some air coming across the radiators there to keep the bikes cooled down, but they'll get them lined up. And while they're doing that, let's check in with Kenny Sargent. He has more as well.
Hey guys, the keys to the race here for me actually is between the 42 of Brian Smith and the number 1 of Jake Johnson. Jake Johnson keeps chipping away at Jared Meese's lead, but he's got to get that win. Walking through his pits earlier, he had his head in his hands. Not sure if he was gripping or if he was concentrating. Jake Johnson really put some deep thought that he's got to get that first win. Will it be Indy?
Well, I tell you what, I think he's thinking about how am I going to keep that number 42 Kawasaki behind me. Every time he turns around, that thing's blowing the paint off the side of his motorcycle on the mile tracks this year. So he's trying to figure out a way to get away from him.
Well, he's going to have the front row starting advantage there. He will come from the outside. We'll find out how he does with that. As you can see, the field is just absolutely loaded with the best of the best. He did a great job earlier tonight, and we'll find out if, in fact, he has that steam here in the main event. But they'll be bringing the heat here, and as you talked about before, it's so difficult to break away here.
It's tough on the Indy Mile to get out front and get away and set a pace that nobody else can match. But as we saw the shot from the front, you see Johnson kind of aiming toward the outside a little bit as his bike's lined up. He's going to dart right as soon as the green flag goes. He's going to get over to the rubber as soon as possible, get that power to the ground, and chase him around the outside into turn 1.
Sammy Halbert with a beautiful job there on that start as we go on board with Henry Wiles, number 17 there, courtesy of Lucas Oil. Henry Wiles, as we talked about before, really made a charge in this heat race to come up and steal that final transfer spot.
As the number 1 shows a little head shake at the end of the straightaway, leads the 80 of Bonzi, the 42 and the 7 and the 9, and we got them all over the place outside turns 3 and 4 on the first lap, fighting for position. They're going to want to chase that number 1 down in a hurry, and there's nobody better than the 42 to do that.
Man, look at the big run by Henry Wiles. By the way, that was Jared Mees on the 9 bike. They got way wide in that previous set of turns, and he lost a lot of positions on it. And look at Mees, who had closed up and then lost a lot of gap as we check in with the 31J. Unfortunately for Daniel Ingram, he will not win here in front of his hometown crowd.
First lap DNFs are always tough, but great job for the Claremont, Indiana native in his return to the Indy Mile and home.
Once again, we go back to our leader, and man, just those adjustments and those corrections are amazing as Jake Johnson on the number 1 bike is leading the group right now by a sizable margin.
Well, I have a feeling that Kawasaki, the 42 of Brian Smith, can run it down at will. We saw him have a little bit of a buck there coming off a turn forward as we check in with Kenny down in the pits.
Guys, Danny Ingram getting off the bike, checking the chain. Looks like there's an issue with the transmission. Danny Ingram out of the race. Disappointment.
A common occurrence here with the transmissions?
Well, yeah, the motorcycle was designed in 1972, and the transmission was too. So it's not uncommon to have transmission failures on the XR 750s.
Well, one of the guys that got off to a great start here just a few moments ago is Sammy Halbert, and earlier today, Kenny Sargent spoke to him.
I mean, we just need to keep winning, win some more races, and we're really working on the Twins program. It seems like Jake and Jared, they really found something over the offseason and gained some horsepower on us, and it's been tough to race them on the miles. It's been hard to keep up, and then obviously racing Cowies are hard. So hopefully we got a little stronger horse here today. We did some work over the last few weeks, and we'll just kind of see how we stack up out there on the big mile.
Do you keep an eye on Meese and Johnson, or do you just try and race your own race?
I mean, you pretty much just race your own race. It's hard not to kind of keep an eye on them a little bit, see if they made the dash or whatever, and obviously if they don't make the dash, then that's a good thing for you in points, but they're in every dash pretty much and on every podium, so that's where I need to be, and I'm right there. Just some small things that we've made some small mistakes, and the main thing was just the big crash at Springfield Mile, and just working out the small details in the program and building up to that.
Pretty interesting to hear Sammy's thoughts on what it's going to take for him to chase down the leaders in the points of Meese and Johnson. I think when it comes down to is the guys on the Harleys, they want to win the miles. They're either going to have to outride them or they're going to have to go to work on their engines and find some horsepower. That's been the name of the game for many, many years. So be interesting to see how that shapes out at the end of the season as we have the Kawasaki 42 of Smith makes a bid for the lead, with the number 1 of Johnson now in second and Sammy Halbert there in third. I mean, Sammy's doing what he needs to do. He's keeping the champion in tow, and they've got the number 1 behind him. So he's in a good spot to gain on the points lead.
Once again, the Kawasaki out front being chased by 2 Harleys. And Sammy mentioned something in that wreck that we saw him in earlier. How hard is it to come back here and get on your game, drive it in just as hard as you always do? Does it get in your head at all?
It doesn't seem to get into Sammy Halbert's head. I honestly believe that when Sammy was growing up, his parents gave him rubber balls instead of gumballs when he wanted one, because that guy has hit the ground really hard multiple times in his career and bounced right back up. That guy is tough as nails.
Once again, taking a look at our leaders here. That is the number 42 of Brian Smith. Jake Johnson in the top 3 there as well. As they check out from the rest of the group and go a little bit deeper there in the pack.
We got the 44 of Brandon Robinson running 4th, as he did at the Sacramento Mile. This top 5 that we're seeing right now is the same top 5 with a little bit different running order as we did in Sacramento, our last event. These guys the cream is rising to the top when the finals here. These are the top 5 best milers this year.
By the way, we did see the number 95 bike. That was JD Beach, who was broken off to the side, out of the way, so the caution flag did not come out here. Again, the top 3 staying nose to tail as they settle in. It almost looked like a brake rotor there on Jake Johnson's bike was lit up.
The number 1's rear brake rotor is glowing. That's a common occurrence for the number 1 of Jake Johnson, as he really rides the brakes hard through the corner to keep the chassis set, allow him to keep the wheels in line.
Guys, looking at Henry Wiles back in the pack, at least in the top 10. A major concern for the crew was keeping the power on the track. There's so much power on the Ducati, they really wanted to find ways to keep the power on the track so Wiles could run up front.
Well, with every lap of the Indy Mile, there's more and more rubber being laid down. I would imagine that the Ducati's going to improve as the race goes on, as more and more rubber gets embedded into this Indiana State Fairgrounds surface.
And once again, it is Brian Smith leading the group, followed by Jake Johnson. And then followed by Jake Johnson. He is not there. Something's happened to Jake Johnson. Red flag is out, and that's not a good sign.
Looks like the number 1 just disappeared off the radar screen there. Not quite sure what happens. Hopefully we'll have ourselves a replay going into turn 3. But number 1 nowhere to be found. It's that's not good for one of our championship contenders.
Absolutely. Sammy Halbert ended up rolling out of that turn in second place. Let's see if we can find out what happened to Jake Johnson here.
Well, it looks to me like he just laid it down. Was starting to roll in onto the backside of the 42. I have a feeling this may have something to do with that rear brake glowing. He's acting as if he has no brakes and is laying the bike down to scrub off as much speed, and he ran out of lean angle.
So Jake Johnson no longer part of your speed code top 5. All right, so we'll stagger him here and get him restarted after Jake Johnson unfortunately went down when he was running in second place, 5 deep. Here comes a Ducati. Let's go back and show you what happened to Jake.
Jake just runs it in as if it appeared as if he doesn't have any brakes, was afraid he was going to run into the back of Smith. Here he is with Kenny Sargent.
Jake, the good news is you were able to get out of your leathers and get in your street clothes. The bad news, you're out of the race, and you said you lost the brakes going into 3?
Yeah, everything was going good. You know, I went the first few laps, got out front and just tried to put in some laps and get away. And, you know, look back after about 5 laps or so and seen Brian creeping up on me. And, you know, finally he got up ahead of me. And, you know, I just was following him. And, you know, I was on the brakes pretty hard. You know, I'm normally pretty hard on the brakes. But when I got in behind Brian, you know, I was having to use them pretty hard to get slowed down going into the corners. And going into turn 3 on that lap, I just went in there and there was nothing. You know, didn't give me any warning, and went in there, no brakes. And my only option was to just lay it down because I had a full head of steam, and I don't think there was any riding it out. So that was my best option at the time, to lay it down. But yeah, it's pretty disappointing. It didn't hurt that bad physically, but definitely put a damper on our championship hope.
Jared Meese got off to a spectacular restart there and took over the lead for just a moment, and then it was the 42 of Brian Smith who once again took it over.
As Smith has problems coming across the stripe, 1 lap into the restart at the halfway flags, and that bike that's been winning a lot of races is not going to win this one tonight. Great break for Meese and Halbert out front now. The first time we've seen 2 Harleys out front for any more than about a half a lap on a mile this year. And 2 guys in the championship hunt as well. This will be interesting.
Also, the 44 of Brandon Robinson has joined the battle here and takes a look.
Talk about double draft. That was a true definition of it right there. Leading a mile national or any Grand National ever for the first time in his career, the 44 of Brandon Robinson out front on the Werner Springsteen Kawasaki. And this motorcycle won with Brian Smith at the controls a couple of years ago. So he certainly has the power capable of keeping it at the front as well.
The GNC Series once again living up to its reputation here as everybody is nose to tail. It's as tight as it can get. Talk about exciting racing. Meese once again makes a run for it. 44 Brandon Robinson also up there at the front.
You know, at one straightaway there, Jared Meese coming off of turn 4, got hooked up. His rear end got up out of the saddle about 6 inches. By the time he gets to turn 1, he's running 4th. Boy, these guys are swapping it up as the 12 of Brad Baker running up toward the front for the first time on a mile himself. This is a barn burner, and the veteran Kenny Coolbeth, number 2, running 5th in line along with Henry Wiles on the Ducati. We got a race coming here.
Welcome back to the Indy Mile and the AMA Grand National Championship Series presented by E3 Spark Plugs. The final laps here at the Indy Mile are taking place. Jared Meese out front, but that changes every single lap. Sammy Halbert right behind him. Also, Brandon Robinson in the hunt here.
A 6-rider dogfight here for the podium with Brandon Robinson at the front. Sammy Halbert doing everything he can to make a move to go by. The 9 of Meese in tow. We got Wiles on the Ducati, Baker on the Harley, and the factory Harley rider of Kenny Coolbeth in 6th. We've got a lot of brands amongst the 6 riders here with 2 to go. Halbert out front. Not a bad spot to be, but with the horsepower of the 44 and that Kawasaki, anything can happen.
Sammy Halbert, who led much of the championship a year ago, certainly finding his groove. Has picked up 2 wins so far this season. His grandfather, Bill, raced, so did his mom and his dad. I mean, he comes from a racing line, and he's trying to hang on here for about another lap.
Well, he just poked it off into turn 3 pretty deep. He made a little feint down to the left side, inside the groove, forcing the riders who are going to draft him to have to draft to the outside. And he put 2-3 bike links on Mies through turns 3 and 4 on that lap. Sammy's doing everything he can. I think he figures the best way he's going to win is to drop the hammer through the corners and get away from him as he puts about 4 bike links on Robinson. Leading down to the back straightaways, you see he comes to the inside. Anybody that drafts to his left will probably lose traction going into the corner.
Beautiful job right there by Mies as he does protect, and he gaps him a little bit again through the turns. That's where that Harley really shines. Can he hang on here down the stretch? And the pressure's coming.
That was close, but Sammy Halbert ran a perfect last 2 laps to win that race. He certainly deserves that win. He put it all on the line on the groove, and he made those guys chase him, and they came up just short. Good job for him.
His 3rd win on the season. Excellent job, and I couldn't agree more with you, man. He just did it perfect the last 2 laps. There's a look at your E3 Spark Plug results. Robinson and Mies in 3rd. Henry Wiles, a great run for him. Back up there to 4th place. Kenny Coolbeth Jr. rounds out your top 5.
Guys, Sammy Halbert can finally check this one off his list. Your first mile win. This is huge.
Oh, this is huge. It's great to get the mile win finally. I've been so close so many times, and luckily Brian Smith broke so we could get up in there. It sucks racing with those Cowies. They're just next to impossible to pass, and I was trying to play my cards right. I thought I was going to try and pass him on the last lap, but then Jared kept trying to pass me, so I finally just went for it and got the lead and had a good strategy there that brought me the win. So
you were talking about being the lightest guy out there. That's what it was going to take to get you the win. Looks like you accomplished it.
Yeah, definitely. Got to give a big shout out to LZ Racing. It built me a strong Harley-Davidson here today. And like I said, I just tried not to eat a lot before this race and get light and go fast.
Sammy Halbert with that first mile win. Guys.
Absolute dedication, right?
Well, he was probably acting like a wrestler all week, trying to get that extra half a horsepower. Whatever he was doing, it worked tonight, that's for sure.
That was a look at your General Tire point standings there. Remember, you can keep up with all the action at lucasoil.com. Like us on Facebook as well, and feel free to hit us up on Twitter. So race number 10 of the series is in the books. Of 16, of course, the championship will run right down to the wire as expected. This telecast has been produced by Lucas Oil Studios. We are glad that Chase is okay after that very scary wreck. Hope you enjoyed all the great racing action here from the Indy Mile. For Kenny Sargent and Chris Carr, I'm Ken Stout. Thanks for watching.